and continuing the story. So Rav and Shmuel are talking about the miracle, and they're saying it's one sort of miracle, or perhaps it was a miracle within the miracle. And in what way was it a miracle within a miracle? So he tells us that, in fact, this one says that there was a forest there, and then the bears appeared as a result of Elisha. Man de Oma nes b'toch nes, the one who says that it was a nes b'toch nes, he says that in fact lo ya'ir habe. There was never a forest there previously, but in fact below dubim habe, and it wasn't a place which was known for bears. But in fact, it's something that came that both the bears appeared miraculously and the forest appeared miraculously. So we question further, perhaps, why was it so necessary that it had to be in that format? Let there be a circumstance of lehevi debuyim. Let there be bears, but will I have a yard? But then maybe there wouldn't. But you didn't need that. There should be an extra forest. Why was there the nest of the forest? Isn't that an unnecessary nest? So the Gemara says, oh, in fact, to be Isay, in fact, it was needed. Why was it needed? Because if there wouldn't been if there wouldn't have been a forest over there, where the bears would have a place to recourse to, then, in fact, the Be'isay, they would have been scared, and they wouldn't have made that they wouldn't have gone and attacked the youths. So both of those were necessary. And more importantly, we can find that this number 42, we've talked about the 42 as their rejection, these youths' rejection of the Torah and of the family's rejection of the Torah. But our next rabbi, who's going to give an interpretation, says that in fact, this idea of the 42 and going against God via the prophet of Elisha was something that had happened in previous generations. And this is a comeback from that time, and that comeback is in fact a result of, or perhaps result is too strong. It wasn't a result of, but nothing that happens in the world is without some sort of purpose, and therefore some sort of semblance of influence that had happened previously comes to affect this generation. And what's that? Omer Rab Chanina. Rab Chanina says, B'shvil v'arba'im v'shnayim karbonos, because of the 42 offerings, Shehikriv Balak, that Balak's sacrificed Melech Moab, the king of Moab, when the Jewish people were just about to enter the land, and this with the story of Balak, Bilam and Balak, that Bilam had convinced Balak that he should set up sacrifices on behalf of swaying Hashem to facilitate some problem to the curses that he wanted to curse against the Jews. So here Elisha had looked, and the verse said klolad, cursed, although it's important to make note that we don't know that he actually cursed them, that Elisha didn't actually curse, because you're not allowed to curse another Jew. But by virtue of he's looking at them and them affecting him negatively, they got negatively affected. But this number 42 came from the cursing that Balaam wanted to do against the Jewish nation, that Balak wanted to do against the Jewish nation. And because of that, the Gemara then says, and the Gemara says, V'huvku. So these 42 children were ripped out. Yisrael, Arbaim Shnayim, these 42 children, Yolodim, were ripped out from the nation Israel. That is to say that when Balak had hired Bilam to curse the Jews, he said as a prerequisite that he should set up on 3 different occasions, because he did prophecy at 3 different occasions, to set up 7 altars, and those 7 altars he brought a bull and a ram at each one. So 3 occasions, 7, 21, two offerings at each one, 42. Those 42 sacrifices were answered in this sort of way. So the Gemara has a query. How is it possible that such an evil man was rewarded against the Jews? So continues the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Rab, he says, Leilam Yasek Odom B'Torah Mitzvahs. Don't we know the statement that a person should be involved in good deeds, B'Torah Mitzvahs, learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and Afal Pishalei Lishma, even though he doesn't done it with the correct intentions for heaven, eventually, so eventually he'll come with the good intentions. So are we saying that he had good intentions? What we're saying is that certainly Balak didn't have any good intentions at the time, but nevertheless, a person should improve himself. So that little bit that he did, continues the Gemara. The Gemara continues and says, Shebeschar Arbaim Ushnaim Karbonos, because of these 42 Karbonos, he had some sort of merit. B'yotza mimeno zocha b'yotza mimeno rutz sheyotza mimeno shleima. He had some sort of merit that came from him. And he did get something positive out of his doing these 42 sacrifices. And what were they? It was Zocha, he merited Sheyotza Mimeno, that came from him, not directly but indirectly, Ruth, Shiyotza Memeno, and Shlomo, King Solomon, Shazaka and King Solomon descended from him. Shekosa Bey, Elef Olas Yalish Lema, where King Solomon offered up these 1,000 sacrifices. And it's not that Shlomo Melech descended from him precisely, but there was a connection. By the way, there happens to be a dispute about this, the text or whereabout it says Shlomo Melech, but notwithstanding that there's a connection to Shlomo Melech, that it says Elef Oles Yala Shlomo, that there was 1,000 burnt offerings Shlomo offered up. But Amar Rabbi Yosef ben Chayni, Ruth Bita Shel Eglon. What was the connection? Ruth was the daughter of Eglon. Bonner Shel Balak, the son of Balak. Again, it wasn't the exact progeny there wasn't two sons, but it was from that descendancy. Asa, and Asa, it came from them. But the point that we're pointing out is that Tabasa Mia Likol Kol Habe, his desire, however, in offering these sacrifices was to curse, and because of this enthusiasm, there came at some sort of time, it wasn't a direct reward, but it was at some sort of time, there was his efforts to destroy the Jewish nation came to a fruition in that these 42 children were killed. One of the commentators makes mention, why is it particularly these 42 children that were affected negatively by the sacrifices of Bilam? So this commentary, the Karen Eira, explains that in general, at the time when the Jews were being cursed, attempted to be cursed by Bilam, turned into a bracha, that the Jews were protected from the curses because, and it says explicitly that because they didn't compromise their ideals, they had pure origins. There weren't incestuous relations that were amongst the Jewish nation. Their mitzvah performance was exemplary. The way that they dressed was correct. It says all the times that they were in Egypt, they separated themselves by dressing in a Jewish fashion. So that stopped them and made sure that they didn't intermingle with the other nations. These youths, as the interpretation of the prophets of the prophet, when he wrote of the different rabbis, when they said, what did they see? We learned that they were the opposite of those benefits. What does that? That they were conceived in a sinful manner. That goes the opposite of how the Jews were in the wilderness and in Mitzrayim, protected their modesty, and their children were conceived all in a holy fashion. these ones, the Jewish nation, their mitzvah performance was considered exemplary in the wilderness and prior to that. But these children, these lads were bereft of any mitzvahs, and in Egypt they weren't. In Egypt and post in the Midbar, people were fully attuned with the holiness of Hashem, while these ones were sporting and doing things to affect the Avodah Zarah, because they abnegated these specific mitzvahs, these specific aspects. The curses of Balaam potentially had an effect on them, so therefore they could be affected by those 42, or by those 42 sacrifices of Balaam were affected them. Then we see that further what happened post that was that oh, sorry, not what happened post that. So what happened post this activity was that from Elisha's looking at them and the curse that came upon them, there was a negative done. What would have happened if he would have been accompanied by the people of Jericho? Then those lads would have been scared off and nothing would have happened. Therefore, this whole passage is telling us the importance of accompaniment, meaning accompanied people going from one area to the other and to ensure that they are that they are safe. So what was the original and what was the original motivation that Elisha came? That's what the next little lines of, and so it says, B'yomra anshe ha'ir el Elisha hineno mesha ba'ir tov k'asher Adoni ro'eh. The people of the city said, the city is a good city. We're happy where we are, but we've got this issue. But since the waters of the city are bad, and eretz mashkeles, and the land is causing the people to die via miscarriage, or there is we're being miscarried. So please do something about it. The Gemara says, as another teaching, the Gemara says, well, if the place is land, why do people hang around? And the answer is Ella. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rab Chanin, Chein Mokam al Yeshvo, that there is a grace, there is a positiveness. Everybody likes where they live, and their own place makes a person feel good, despite whatever negatives there are about it in this house, despite their shortcomings. And in fact, the Gemara then goes on and says, there are Rabbi Yochanan says there are three graces that have a similar impact. That is Shlesha Kaniyas Hain, the Chain Mokum al Yeshvo, a place that appears favorable to its inhabitants. Chain Isha al Bailov, a wife is favorable to a husband. Behind Mikach al Mikcha, and a person is happy with his purchase. and as a reflection in halacha that a person should, because things find grace in a person's eyes, a person should compliment a person when he buys something new. A person should say favorable things about another man's wife, and a person should say favorable things in relationship to the places places where a person lives. And as we say that a person should compliment the groom on the beauty of his on the goodness of the woman that he marries at the chuppah. So what does the Gemara then conclude with? And we'll conclude this section over here. But even though this turns another thing, but that says, notwithstanding everything that happened, and Elisha was a holy man. Elisha became ill with 3 illnesses, and one was and one was because he incited the bears against the bears to attack the children. So although Elisha saw that these young lads had no positive merits, and that punishment was coming to these these children, to these young lads, to these adults, notwithstanding that, because Elisha was a part of it, Elisha also was punished and got some sort of level of punishment out of it. And the Gemara continues with the other interesting stories about what two other incidents which Elisha was punished for. So an interesting thing that we can understand is that his improper reaction, even though they were warranted, in the end, Elisha also was given something negative as part of his involvement in this arena, in this area. I think that it's been I think this whole story from the Gemara and the aspects that happen to it as all very interesting and teaches us a lesson. And perhaps one lesson that we can walk away with is that even if people need punishment, nevertheless, we don't have to be the one which is part of it, which causes it. As there's an expression, Harba Mokom La Hashem, there's many paths open to Hashem, and we don't necessarily have to be part of the ones that cause negative to our fellow man. Wishing you a great day, and thank you for listening.
The